You sure your kid isn't faking it? He doesn't look that sick to me. He didn't ask to verify. He said it to humiliate. A black mother, still in her nursing scrubs after a 12-hour shift, was simply stopping to pump gas. Her 10-year-old son sat in the back seat, breathing hard through an inhaler. But the two white officers didn't see that. They saw the license plate, the skin color, and a tired woman alone at night. She didn't shout. She didn't resist. She simply said, "I need to call a family member." Then they snatched her phone. And the documents she was holding slipped, landing right at her son's feet. They didn't know the boy had already hit record. They didn't know the person she was calling wasn't a lawyer. It was the mayor. And 3 minutes later, those same two officers were the ones in handcuffs, right there at the scene. Naomi Fields wasn't supposed to be out that late. Not after a double shift. Not with sore feet, a dried-up throat, and the ghost of a migraine pulsing behind her left eye. But the tank was near empty, and she'd promised Jalen pancakes in the morning, which meant at least enough gas to make it back to the grocery store before school drop-off. So she turned off the freeway and coasted into the chevron at the edge of Oak Ridge and 87th, headlights flickering, the dashboard sighing like it, too, was tired of being asked for more. The gas station was mostly empty. Just a silent lot under buzzing white lights, a flickering, open, sign in the distance, and her 10-year-old son in the back seat, already nodding off. He had his hoodie half-zipped and a small blue inhaler in his lap, a precaution, she hoped, and not something she'd have to reach for tonight. Naomi stepped out of the car with slow care, her nursing scrubs still visible under her thin jacket. She pushed her debit card into the machine once, then again, then a third time, because the damn pump wouldn't read. When it finally beeped green, she exhaled in relief. Maybe, just maybe, she'd be in bed before midnight. But then she heard it. Tires. Not fast. But not casual either. The low hum of authority rolling in where it wasn't needed. A squad car. Naomi didn't react at first. It's just a coincidence, she thought. She kept pumping. Then the voice came. Loud. Sharp. Unapologetic. "Ma'am. Step away from the vehicle." She turned. Two officers. Both white. One shorter, thick-necked, with a habit of tapping his belt. The other tall, angular, already shining a flashlight at her car. "License and registration," the tall one barked. Naomi blinked. "Is there a problem?" "We'll get to that. Just show us your ID." She motioned toward her purse in the front seat, moving slowly. "I'm just getting gas. My son's in the car. He has asthma. We just left the hospital. I'm a nurse at Mercy East." The shorter officer leaned in, peering past her toward the backseat window. "That your boy?" "Yes," she said softly. "His name's Jalen." He squinted, then smirked. "You sure he's sick?" "Doesn't look it." He turned to his partner. "Maybe she's just playing the system." Naomi didn't answer. Because there wasn't an answer that would make it better. She could tell. The way they stood, not curious, not concerned. Just charged. Wired. Looking for something that felt like control. And they thought they'd found it. She reached gently for the folder on the passenger seat, a set of discharge papers from the ER, but as she lifted it, it slipped. Pages scattered to the concrete. One slid under the back door, close to Jalen's shoes. The taller officer stepped forward. "We need to verify his identity." Naomi kept her voice steady. "He's 10 years old. He's scared. You're pointing flashlights in his face." "We're scared too," the short one snapped. "People lie every day." He reached toward her phone, which she'd left on the edge of the gas pump. "You mind if I see who you were calling?" Actually, she said carefully, I do. He took it anyway. Behind her, Jalen shifted. Quiet. Watching. Learning. And then, without a word, he opened the small second phone from his backpack. The one Naomi insisted he carry after the last time this happened. A flip phone. Prepaid. Only one contact programmed in. He tapped record. Then he tapped call. The phone rang once. Then the voice answered. Mayor Kingston. Jalen's voice was barely audible, but clear. It's happening again. Now. Nothing more was said. Nothing more was needed. The mayor didn't hang up. He didn't ask questions. Because he remembered the promise he made at Detective Isaiah Field's funeral 3 years earlier. To Naomi. To her son. That if either of them ever felt unsafe, ever, they should call him directly. And tonight, that promise became something more than ceremonial. It became immediate. Naomi didn't know what her son had said. She didn't hear it. But she saw the way his small fingers trembled just slightly as he slipped the phone back into his jacket pocket, returning to stillness as if nothing had happened. The two officers, unaware of the call, continued their routine, the same one she'd read about in forums, heard whispered in break rooms at the hospital, seen dissected in community meetings, pushed the boundary, raised the tension, then used the reaction as justification. The taller one crouched down to the backseat window. You okay in there, little man? He asked, almost mocking. Jalen didn't answer. The shorter officer now stood closer than necessary, thumbing Naomi's phone. Lot of calls to the same number. Who's this K guy? Your supplier? Naomi exhaled slowly. Her fingers ached from how tightly she'd been clutching her car keys. That's my emergency contact. The officer smirked. You need a mayor to vouch for you now? He chuckled. But then the sound of tires cut him off. They weren't police tires. These had more weight. 3 unmarked black SUVs pulled into the lot. No sirens. No lights. Just the quiet dominance of motion with purpose. The kind of arrival that didn't ask for attention, it assumed it. The officers turned, stiffening. Naomi didn't blink. The doors opened in near-silent synchronization. From the first vehicle stepped 2 men and a woman, all dressed in dark suits. No visible weapons, no shouting. Just badges, glinting briefly in the gas station lights. One of the men spoke first, walking toward the officers with a tone that carried legal gravity. Officers. Step away from the vehicle. This is a traffic matter, the tall one said quickly. We're just conducting standard. You're done conducting, the woman interrupted, flashing her badge. Agent Lin. Office of the Inspector General. We're taking jurisdiction. The shorter officer took a half step back. There's no cause for. We've already accessed the station footage, she replied. 3 angles. Audio. Body cams are off. You've violated protocol, and you're both now subjects in a civil rights investigation. Detain yourselves. Right now. The disbelief on their faces was almost cartoonish, as if the laws they bent daily had suddenly bent back. Naomi said nothing. She didn't gloat. She didn't explain. She just took 1 step closer to her car door, opened it, and looked at Jalen. He looked back at her, lips pressed tightly, his hand gripping the inhaler now. She didn't have to ask if he was okay. She knew. The shorter officer began to protest, but the second man from the SUVs was already cuffing him. His partner didn't resist. Maybe he'd seen this play out before, in training videos, or nightmares. Within minutes, the gas station that had been half empty was now surrounded. A police supervisor arrived. 2 cruisers were parked across the street. One of the federal agents spoke quietly into a radio while the others took statements from the station clerk and the only other witness, a young woman at Pump 2 who'd already uploaded a 23-second video to Twitter with the caption, "They stopped a black nurse and her son. And now they're the ones being cuffed." It had 3,000 retweets before the hour was up. By the time Naomi was finally asked if she'd like to file a formal complaint, she had only one question. Will the footage go to internal review, or public? The agent hesitated. Naomi didn't. Good, she said. Because I don't need to explain myself anymore. I just need the next mom to not be me. She turned to Jalen. Ready? He nodded. She drove home without another word. By the time Naomi walked through her front door, it was 12:41 a.m. The neighborhood was still. The porch light buzzed quietly overhead, flickering like it couldn't decide whether it wanted to work or give up. Inside, the air was warm but hollow, the kind of silence that settled into the walls after too many nights of keeping it together. Jalen had fallen asleep in the passenger seat on the drive home. Naomi didn't wake him. She just lifted him, slowly, carefully, and carried him to his room like she used to when he was 4. When his father was still alive. When everything didn't feel like it came with terms and conditions. She pulled his sneakers off gently, covered him, and kissed the top of his head. Then she went back into the kitchen, opened her laptop, and started writing. Not to complain. Not to vent. To document. Because Naomi Fields had learned a long time ago that if you didn't write your story, someone else would. And they'd write it wrong. The statement took her 3 hours. It was written in calm, declarative language. No adjectives. No emotion. Just timestamps, body positions, language used, observable behaviors, badge numbers, and quotes. She attached the gas station receipt. The ER discharge note. The file from Jalen's phone, audio only, timestamped. And finally, she included a PDF, record of prior incidents, Officer Barry K. Dorsey, badge 81472. It wasn't the first time someone filed a complaint about him. It just might be the first time someone had evidence that mattered. At 7:03 a.m., her inbox lit up. Subject, Internal Response Request, Case #F3429. From, Deputy Chief Julia Reyes, OIG Oversight. Naomi stared at the email, hands still resting on the keys. They were taking it seriously. For once. She sat back, not with satisfaction, but with a strange, uncertain stillness. Like waiting for something heavy to fall that had been dangling overhead for too long. She didn't expect the media to find out. Not yet. But they did. And by noon, her life wasn't hers anymore. The first headline was from a local blog. Black nurse profiled at gas station, officers detained after alleged misconduct. Then it hit Channel 8. Mother and child mistaken for suspects, federal agents intervene. Then the national papers. Then Twitter. Then the phone started ringing. She didn't answer at first. Not the press. Not the stations. Not the nonprofits looking for her to make a statement. She just went to work the next day like she always did, because diapers still needed changing, patients still needed lifting, and her rent wasn't going to wait for justice. But when she walked into Mercy East, the eyes were already on her. Some whispered. Some nodded respectfully. One nurse, a white woman from administration, walked right up to her with a cautious smile. Naomi, can I just say, you handled that with so much grace. We were all watching. And, you know, not everyone could have stayed that calm. Naomi didn't smile. She just replied, that's not grace. That's survival. And walked past her. Meanwhile, the department had begun spinning. Behind closed doors, the Internal Review Board wasn't asking whether the officers were wrong, they were asking whether the recording was admissible. Whether Jalen's phone violated privacy. Whether the gas station footage had been edited. Whether Naomi escalated by not complying fast enough. Because that's what systems do when they get caught. They don't apologize. They redact. They rewrite. But this time, Naomi had her own pen. The city released a sanitized statement the following week. Carefully crafted. Filled with passive voice. An interaction occurred between uniformed officers and a private citizen. The matter is under review. We are committed to learning from this situation. But Naomi didn't wait for them to finish writing their version. She sent her own. To every newsroom. Every civil rights org. Every local church. Every parent group. And the mayor's office. No hashtags. No drama. Just a public folder titled, "What Actually Happened?" And then something unexpected happened. People started replying. Not with outrage, with stories. Nurses who'd been stopped in scrubs. Teachers questioned outside their schools. Black teens accused of matching descriptions, blocks from home. Even a retired judge who said she was once pulled over in her own driveway. The folder Naomi created became a record others added to. And what began as a single statement became a pattern too large to ignore. That week, Officer Barry Dorsey was placed on unpaid leave. His partner was reassigned. The mayor released a new statement. This time, it included Naomi's name. Not a private citizen. Not the individual. It said, Naomi Fields acted with integrity, composure, and restraint. The city owes her, and her son, not just an apology, but reform. Naomi didn't attend the press conference. She was working a night shift. But when she got home at 4:12 a.m., there was a package on her doorstep. No note. Just a white envelope with a gold seal, and a letter inside. The system almost erased you. But now your name is in the record, and this time, they can't rewrite it. Office of the Mayor. She folded it once. Tucked it in her drawer. And went to bed, with the first sense of exhale she'd felt in months. It started with a request. Not from Naomi. Not from the press. From a 12-year-old boy in a public school civics class. His name was Tyler Knox, and his assignment was to research local government misconduct cases and present a timeline. While other kids chose scandals from 10 years ago, or vague stories with no names, Tyler stood in front of his class with a single slide headline. Why Officer Number 81472 isn't on the force, but still has his pension. That badge number, Officer Barry Dorsey's, had become something of a symbol. Not because of how famous he was, but because of how quietly the department had tried to bury the outcome. No termination. No press release. Just reassigned, then early retirement. And then, nothing. But the internet doesn't forget. Especially when someone like Naomi Fields made sure of it. The video Jalen had recorded was still online. Clipped. Clean. Unedited. It had been downloaded, mirrored, reposted on dozens of advocacy pages. Every time someone tried to flag it, it popped up again. Because people didn't just see a cop and a nurse. They saw themselves, or someone they loved. Someone being told, without being told, that they didn't belong. And now that badge number, 81472, was showing up in places the department never expected. On protest signs held by nurses during night shifts. On PowerPoint slides in college law classes. On a mural downtown, where the artist had painted Naomi and Jalen's silhouettes walking away from a cruiser. It was no longer just a number. It was a warning. The department tried to get ahead of it. They offered a community healing forum. They hosted a badge accountability roundtable. They even floated the idea of retiring the badge number itself. But that made things worse. Because you can't retire a badge people never agreed to forget. Naomi never asked for any of this. She never demanded headlines or settlements. But she didn't disappear either. When a local journalist asked why she kept showing up to public comment meetings, she simply said, "Because if I don't sit in that room, he's not the only one they'll try to erase." One afternoon, a young officer, black, mid-20s, approached Naomi in the grocery store parking lot. He looked nervous. "Ms. Fields?" She turned, surprised. "Yes? I just wanted to say thank you." She tilted her head. "For what?" "I almost quit the academy last year. Because of guys like Dorsey. But then I saw what you did. And I thought, maybe I could be the kind of badge someone trusts." Naomi didn't smile right away. She just looked at him, long and clear. "Then be the kind of badge they can't delete." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." And walked away. That same week, a bill passed through City Council. It required that any officer under civil investigation would have their badge number and case summary made publicly available, indefinitely. No expungement. No early retirement clause. No digital erasure. The ordinance was called the Fields Amendment. The mayor didn't name it. The people did. And late one night, Naomi sat at her kitchen table, her son doing homework nearby, as an email came in from the Office of Municipal Archives. Badge Archive Update, Request for Historical Note. Ms. Fields. Per public request, we are updating the digital record of badge number 81472 with a historical context section. Would you be willing to provide a one-sentence summary for future readers? She thought for a moment. Then typed slowly. This badge did not fall because of violence, but because one mother refused to let silence win. She hit send. Then turned off the light. The official word was review fatigue. That's what the memo said. A 2-page document circulated internally at the police department, stamped with city letterhead, and riddled with vague phrasing about cognitive strain, personnel exhaustion, and media saturation. Buried in the third paragraph was the real message. Effective immediately, the department will suspend external comment on case 81472 until further notice. It wasn't suspension. It was avoidance. They weren't tired of what had happened. They were tired of being reminded. Naomi found out about the memo not from the press, but from a clerk. A part-time admin assistant who handed her a folded copy during a community safety meeting. The young woman leaned in and whispered. "They want people to forget. This is how they start." Naomi unfolded the page. "Read it once. Then again. Not with rage. Not even surprise. Just clarity." She placed the paper back on the table and quietly asked, "Can I speak next?" They gave her the mic. It wasn't a large crowd, maybe 40 people in a worn-out library room with flickering overheads. But she didn't need volume to make impact. She walked up, took the mic, and said, "They're not exhausted. They're hoping we are." There were murmurs in the room. She continued. "They don't want accountability to disappear. Just to be delayed long enough that we stop showing up. But I didn't do this so they'd fire one man. I did it so my son wouldn't have to carry a flashlight in his face again at 10 years old. So no, I'm not tired. And no, I'm not done. And neither should you be." She stepped back. And for the first time since the incident, the room stood and clapped. Not performatively. Not politely. But as if they needed to. Over the next few weeks, something changed. The city stopped talking. But the community started recording. Not in secret, in public. Residents began live streaming all community police review boards. Teachers read excerpts of Naomi's public statement in middle school civics. A college journalism class launched a real-time police language tracker, analyzing every word said at official briefings. And then someone, no one knows who, leaked the unedited audio logs of the original gas station incident. It was worse than the public had known. The officers had laughed. They had bet, mid-incident, on whether Naomi had married into her car. They joked about her son's hoodie being 3 sizes too responsible. It wasn't profiling. It was performance. For each other. And the system had let it happen because it refused to look. The mayor called Naomi that night. Apologized again. Offered to increase patrol diversity. To meet with her privately. She declined. "I don't want more meetings," she said. "I want fewer cover-ups." 2 days later, a high-ranking internal affairs officer resigned. No public statement. Just walked out. Rumors said she'd asked to reopen several files. Requests were denied. So she left. Naomi heard from her in a letter. It said, "They told me there's nothing left to see. But I saw everything. And you were right." The department issued a final release at the end of the quarter. It was short. Emotionless. Robotic. After extensive review, no further disciplinary action will be taken regarding badge 81472. And just like that, the system closed the file. Or so they thought. Because Naomi didn't need them to keep it open. She had already copied everything. Uploaded the bodycam transcripts. Filed the citizen affidavits. Archived the complaint timeline in a permanent, searchable database under the name. Not just one mother. On its first day, the page got 1,200 views. By the third week, it had 78,000. People weren't tired. They were finally waking up. The city tried one last time. They didn't call it a retraction. They didn't admit fault. They labeled it a clarification. The PDF was bland. Bureaucratic. 2 pages of vague phrasing, strategically evasive punctuation, and more passive voice than a high school essay. We acknowledge that Officer 81472 engaged in conduct that may have been perceived as inappropriate. While also recognizing the emotional response this incident has generated. No names. No apology. No accountability. And worst of all, they added a quiet clause near the bottom. As of this date, we request that third-party publications refrain from distributing unverified citizen footage that may contribute to community unrest. Translation. They wanted the video gone. But what they hadn't learned, still, was that you can't edit what the world already downloaded. You can't erase what's been carved into public record by 2 million views, 1,000 articles, and the lived experience of one black mother and her 10-year-old son. Naomi didn't respond. She didn't post a rebuttal. Didn't take interviews. Didn't hold a press conference. She wrote a letter. Printed. Black ink. 1 page. Delivered by hand to City Hall. It read, "You have redacted enough of us. Our names. Our faces. Our grief. Our dignity. This time, we are the authors. And you don't get to hold the pen." It was signed, simply. Naomi Fields. Mother. Nurse. Witness. Within 48 hours, that letter was framed and placed in the lobby of the city's newly renamed Civilian Oversight Building, a change made quietly but permanently, at the request of community leaders, activists, and surprisingly, the mayor himself. And just beneath her words, etched into a steel plaque, were 6 more. No more footnotes in their reports. The academy changed too. That fall, every new recruit was required to complete a 3-week course titled Narrative Harm and Structural Silence. Naomi's case became Lesson 1. Jalen's recording, 38 seconds long, was now played on the first day of training. No one spoke during it. They listened. Not just to the words, but to the breath between them. To the fear. The silence. The restraint. And to the sound of a boy doing what grown systems had refused to. Years later, when Jalen turned 18, he stood outside the same gas station on the anniversary of that night. There was a camera crew nearby, but he didn't speak to them. Instead, he held up a laminated print of the original police memo. The one that tried to redact his mother from history. And beside it, the statement she wrote in response. He didn't say anything clever. Just looked into the lens and said, "They tried to erase us. So we made the truth too big to erase." Then he placed both pages, side by side, on a community board behind the pumps. Stapled them into the wood. And walked away.